Well, I'm standing now in the forecourt of Glasgow Central Station. And though I've been here many times over the years, I'm reminded of the very first time I arrived here, January 1940. It was a very cold winter's day, the snow was on the ground, and I was starting out on what can only be described as an adventure which was to dramatically change my life. I was 16 years and 3 months of age, and though I'd always wanted to be a performer in some form or other, my parents were all against this. They decided that I should start earning my living or train for something. Well, I wanted to train to be an actor. And it was suggested by my uncle that we had relations up here. They might inquire about me starting an engineering apprenticeship. I think I was in shock. It seemed a little bit like a prison sentence, trying to become an engineer to please my family. And I'm now going to retrace my steps in Glasgow and down on Clydebank and absorb the atmosphere of Glasgow today and contrast it with the Glasgow that I knew back in 1940.
Soon to be launched from the Clydebank dockyard where she has lain so long, the mighty Cunard 534 is at last taking on the semblance of the miracle luxury liner.
When I arrived in the area to the west of Glasgow, known as Clydeside, in 1940, it was the biggest centre for shipbuilding in the world. The great ships of modern history were all built here, including the Queen Mary.
I am happy to name this ship the Queen Mary. I wish to accept to her and to all who sail in her.
It was wartime. Liners and battleships were all being manufactured here. There was full employment for tens of thousands in this thriving community on the banks of the River Clyde. Life revolved around the heavy industry, and I could see that conditions were tough. The only escape from the grind was a trip along the whole of the Clyde, taking in all of the shipyards and industrial landscape en route in one of the Clyde steamers, sailing to the green and pleasant havens of Doon, Millport and Rothesay, going Doon The Watta, as the Glaswegians say, even to this day.
We're going in the water for the fair.
Well, I've now arrived in Yoka, which is down the Dumbarton Road, just before you get to Dalmuir. And then I'd get off the tram car, because this was the stockyard, walk down there, turn left, down the other road to the end, and Drysdales was on the right. Drysdales was an engineering yard making pumps, and I was doing a comprehensive apprenticeship, learning how to build the pumps and turbines that were essential for ships and shipbuilding. As I turned the familiar corner, along the route I'd have walked down from the Dumbarton Road, there is now the unfamiliar sight of a modern housing estate. And I've come to meet somebody who was actually an apprentice at the same time I was at Drysdales. And I see him over there. His name is Alf Palmer. Alf, Nicholas Parsons.
Nicholas, well met.
How
well
nice
met.
to see you.
It's been some time since we stood here.
Oh my goodness me, yes, indeed.
Isn't it just?
It brings back strange memories.
Isn't it just?
To see the place you knew and worked in, and the first thing you come to was the gatehouse, where you went in, and there's a great big machine where you got your card out, put it in there, and you clocked on.
There I was, heavy boots, overalls, and you were made to work then. You know, people get the idea of an apprenticeship as someone who stands by and sort of picks up by watching. But we were made to both learn and do.
And we had foremen who ruled that place with a rod of iron.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I mean, if a foreman clipped you around the ear, I mean...
You stayed clipped.
You stayed clipped. I wasn't used to standing for such a long time on my feet without a break. And the only place I could rest was in the lavatory.
Yeah, 7 minutes.
7 minutes. Tom McKendrick.
Nicholas!
Oh.
What a joy to see you.
Tom McKendrick is Clydebank born and bred. Like me, he served his apprenticeship, albeit in the early 1960s, but the experience he had was much the same as mine.
A normal working day for me in the shipyard would be to arrive at 7:30 in the morning, usually 5 minutes late. The consequence was 15 minutes docked off your pay. Let that be a lesson to you. Chastised by the foreman, go to the shed, pick up your plan and your job for the day and out into a shipyard. Middle of winter, smog, It was a dirty, filthy, horrible, smutty, hard place. There is this wonderful romantic view of shipbuilding in Clydeside, but everybody, or anybody who's honest, will tell you it ain't easy. But it marks you as a man, and you never forget it.
Because, Alf, it was tough and uncompromising and harsh, but it was a memory I treasure, because I experienced something I never thought from the way, the environment into which I was born, that I would ever experience. So in a way, I am very grateful to Glasgow and to Clydebank and to people like you, because that's where I grew up and matured, and they turned me into the man I eventually became.
Yes.
It was a wonderful experience, great learning for life.
Yes, we topped you off at the end. Yes. gave you that polish.
Yes, yeah. You gave me the final shine, didn't you?
Right, Nicholas, what I'd like to actually show you here is some photographs that were probably very relevant to your time in the yards. I mean, look at these faces here. These guys are probably 30.
Those are faces that I saw all the time when I was working on Clydebank.
But the thing about it is, if you look at their garb, this is poverty. I mean, these people are working and they're working a full working week, and they're absolutely filthy. But somehow or another, you know, beaming through all that kind of hardship and poverty, there's smiles and there's personality.
And I had a very English accent in those days, and I arrived on Clydebank talking like that. How I survived, I do not know, but I did. And maybe it's one of the few things in life I am proud of. I was working with all those characters. We've got to ask you a question. Are you a boss's man? Because you're a boss's man, you're out, you know. And I was the boy on the job. So he says, right, Nick, he says, so what I think we need here is an arse wrench. I said, what do you mean? My English accent, just right. He said, come off it, Nick. I mean, you've heard of a monkey wrench. Well, this is a wee thing bigger. So all innocence, I go to the store, and they're me with my English accent saying, oh, Willie, David Mitchell says, can he have an arse wrench? So everybody's laughing. And he turns to me and says, you go right back up there to Davy and say, if he sends you on any more wild goose chases, I'll come straight up there and I'll wrench his arse right off him. You mustn't show them you've been a fool of. So I go back and I said, oh, Davy, I've seen Willie in the store, and he says, what size of arse wrench would you want? He said, OK, Nick, you're OK. That's it. Yeah. So I was in. If you're prepared to muck in and be one of the lads, yeah, you're OK. I mean, we like you. Yeah, you make us laugh and all that, but we'll teach you how to get your effing horns dirty, because this is a living here. I don't know where you have a effing butler at home or what, Nick, but I mean, and they were wonderful chaps.
You know, amongst the group of people that we were with, someone who had a feature which was a bit different from the rest was actually welcomed.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
And of course, also as an entertainer, one recognises this great sense of humour. There was humour in the works,
so,
wasn't there?
yes.
Which sustained you, really.
Yes, you had to laugh. Some of it. And the patter, of course, was always...
That was amazing.
I mean, the comedy, this is probably, you know, one of the things that aided your survival in the harsh environment. You know, the fact that you could entertain. And there's been many who took that path. If you think about working in a yard, start at 7:30, there's a hell holy of noise. It goes on to 12:30, and then it stops. Now, you've not been allowed to talk for a good 4.5 hours.
Well, sometimes you couldn't talk because you couldn't be heard.
Couldn't be heard, right? So the raconteurs appear on the scene, and there was plenty of them. The joke tellers. When I worked in the shipyard, I always worked with poets, tap dancers. You know, there was always the other job. There was the dream that everybody pursues, or somebody who was brilliant at a pair of spoons or a mouth organ, or somebody who could sing an Italian opera aria. You know, the drop of a hat. And you know, really, you wouldn't work with stupid men. You were really working with people who never really had an opportunity to become great writers or great actors or great whatever. But the material was there, you know, the comedy, the humour, the talent. Would you say that your skill as an entertainer aided your survival?
Oh, yes, absolutely. The greatest catalyst of all is humour, is comedy. And, you know, and I could joke with them. When I made them laugh, we had fun. It's the one thing my parents didn't bank on when they packed me off to Glasgow. The workplace became my first stage. I would join in with all the tomfoolery that went on in the yards. And despite me being this well-to-do English boy with the upper-class accent, I gained quite a reputation as a mimic. And perhaps by entertaining them, I became accepted.
That's your 4 tickets. That's where we will rock you. That's Friday, 20th of January.
Glasgow was also home to an incredible number of theatres. Wonderful places where I could go at night time with the shillings I'd saved and see some amazing shows. There was the Alhambra, the Theatre Royal, the Empire, and still very much in operation today, the King's Theatre. Well, I've now come into the King's Theatre, coming through the foyer. This is a famous Matcham Theatre, that man who designed more theatres in our country than anybody else. His sense of history is here everywhere. Wonderful, well-polished handrail going down. So the noise we can hear, of course, is they're setting up for the show that's on tonight. But I'm now in the middle of the auditorium, and I can remember sitting up there in the gallery as a raw apprentice, getting my few coins together to watch the 8:30 show. Saw some wonderful acts. I had that great thrill that when the curtain went up, oh, it was so exciting. It was the magic of the theatre, the magic of show business, which absolutely got me going. Johnny Beattie!
Nicholas, how are you?
It's wonderful.
Lovely to see you. Oh, how the time.
One of my Scottish comic heroes.
Oh, speak up, I didn't hear you in the back there.
I'm with a most wonderful Scottish comedian called Johnny Beattie, whose history is similar to mine, I've discovered, because he served his time in Fairfield Shipyard as an electrician, and he's sitting opposite me now. Johnny, so Glasgow's a special place when it comes to comedy, isn't it?
Very much so. I love the line in William McIlvaney's book, Laidlaw. He describes Glasgow to an English friend as a 24-hour cabaret. You know, the patter goes all day long, especially in those days in the shipyards.
Yeah, I experienced that down in the shipyards. I mean, they were pulling my leg, but maybe I'm a natural foil for comedians, which I exploit now in Just a Minute and other things. But I was known as a big neck. That big English bastard. He's a right wee comic on occasions.
And all the nicknames for the people. Oh, do you remember that?
Oh,
there was one guy who was always on the sky. They could never find him. And they called him Claude Rains, the Invisible Man. They called one charge hand the sheriff. He would come round up and say, "What's the hold-up? What's the hold-up?"
Because, you see, our start in this amazing profession is so similar.
Yeah.
Because my parents didn't want me to become an actor, and that's all I wanted from the age of about 5. So when I came to Glasgow, which they thought they were getting me away from those sort of influences, I found there was so much theatre. I searched them out. There's a lot of amateur dramatics. They have this lovely feeling for the theatre. And I discovered a thing called the Transport Players. And so I got a wee part in that. And of course, you know, it was the beginning of the war, so a lot of people were called up. In fact, I was the age of 16. I was having to make love scenes with a woman of about 25. And that's how it sort of started. And then, of course, when I was registered for military service, they said, "But you're in a reserved occupation. Pumps, it's very, very important war work. Carry on." So I thought, fine, I'll carry on, because it gave me the opportunity when I finished work to get off and get some acting experience. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's how I eased into show business. And I owe this all to Glasgow. Not too far away at the Empire Theatre, in 1943, I was invited by the great discovery man of the period, Carroll Lewis, to join his travelling stage show for 1 week. And while I was thrilled to be playing this famous theatre, there was a problem. I was very nervous that the bosses in the firm, if they discovered that I was working in the evening in the theatre when I was doing important war work, they would make a fuss and it would be stopped. So I changed my name, called myself Nick Marlowe. And I thought they didn't know. But this sort of news travels fast, because I remember one of my workmates coming up to me and said, "Hey, Nick, was he at the Empire?" I said, "Yes, I'm not talking about it. I don't want the works manager here." He said, "Well, don't worry. I mean, I think we should all come along, get together, come along, give you the big horn." A big round of applause. He came back to me in the afternoon. He said, "Second house Friday, 45 tickets." And I got them 45 tickets, and that second house on that Friday, they cheered everything I did. It was only years later, when I came to leave Drysdales, and I went to say my farewells to the fearsome works manager, Mr. Russell, that I realised there had been 46 people in the theatre. He says, "You got your lines, you're qualified now. I don't know what you're going to do with it, but congratulations and carry on." And as I got to the door, he suddenly said to me, he said, "Oh, by the way, if you ever come back to the Glasgow Empire, will you let me know? Because I thought you were great the last time you were there." And I thought this was the last man I wanted to know about that job. And here was he in that audience and actually applauding. Never did I think, when I used to come to the King's Theatre as a raw youth, paying my few pence to go up to the gallery and watch the 8:30 shows. I never thought that I would one day come back here and actually be top of the bill, starring in a West End comedy, which is what happened. So in one sense, I lived the dream, and I'm still living that dream, because I love my profession. Glasgow and Clyde Bank and the wonderful people I worked with helped me to form the person and the character that I evolved into. I wondered if I could have achieved what I have in any other city. Well, I've just been fitted with a life jacket. I'm now going to be taken in an inflatable boat because I want to look at some of the Clyde from the middle of the river and see how it's changed since the days I used to go Doon The Watta. Going down the Clyde as I am now, I'm not only confused, I'm very sad and puzzled, because the days when I was up here, you'd have ships of all sizes where they had these wonderful engineering yards and shipyards building ships of all sizes, naval craft, liners, and now it's quiet and rather deserted, rather derelict and desolate. The heart of Glasgow beat through the Clyde, and the heart of the Clyde was shipbuilding. That was the heavy industry on which Glasgow boasted about being the second largest city of the British Empire. It is sad to see the changes, which are, alas, I think, going to be almost permanent. Hello, Brian.
Hello, Nicholas. How you doing?
Brian Whittingham, lovely to meet you. I've come to meet you here in the site of what was John Brown's shipyard, the biggest shipyard in the Clyde. And you worked here?
Yeah, I worked here as an apprentice and a journeyman plater. I left school when I was 14. I was in the boiler shop in John Brown's, which I thought was hell on earth, with the noise, the cold, the swearing, and the work was so heavy. And when I worked here, they were building the QE2. Mm-hmm. The joke is everybody that worked on it will say to people, "I built the QE2," as if they'd done it on their own.
And what year was that?
I left school in 1965. And just everybody where I lived just went to the shipyards, that's all you done.
So when did Brown's become empty and neglected like it is now?
Well, I think after the QE2, that was the last great liner that was done. I think the Koreans and other countries had become smarter and better at producing cheaper products. You've lost a community, you've lost all this comradeship, you've lost all this vitality, but they were terrible places to work.
Absolutely.
And I think it's good that I don't have to go and work in this job anymore, because it was horrendous. Just an industrial graveyard.
When I was here, it was wartime and there was full employment. But in the 60s and 70s, shipbuilding went into a rapid decline and many shipyards began to close. The workers here were proud of their industry.
I think 22,500 ships built in a river.
And didn't let it go down without a fight.
The names like the Hood, the Lusitania, shattering historical events. If you think of the story, every single one of these ships, they actually originated in this river. It's almost as if the river had feelers and it just reached out all over the world. A third of the world's shipping was built on this river. And it was the big names in history, And I think you've got to be proud of that. You've got to be proud of that achievement.
Well, I'm on the ferry now, going across to the Isle of Bute, and I'm going to visit an amazing character called Jimmy Reed. Jimmy Reed worked and served his time on Clydebank. He was quite a militant character, and he led an amazing sit-in where he tried to save the work for his workmates.
We trust you've had a pleasant journey with us, and on behalf of Clydebank, thank you for travelling with us.
Jimmy, it's a huge pleasure to meet you. You are imbued with shipbuilding and the Clydebank, and what does it mean to you?
It's the main driving force in my life. Been born in the Clyde.
Mm-hmm.
When I was young, I thought the only ships that were built anywhere in the world were in the Clyde. Then I discovered later that it was only the best of them that were built in Clyde.
But then, having served your time, you get involved in the political scene. Were you always a political animal?
Oh, no question about it. See, I was born in the 30s. I had 3 sisters, all died before the age of 5. The infant mortality rate in Glasgow was the highest in Europe, and there were reasons for that. The poverty was widespread. I'm afraid I assimilated all the circumstances around me, directed at changing society.
Talking to Jimmy, to this day, he still cannot understand why the shipyards were being closed.
The point is we had full order books, but they were talking about closing the shipyards. We had an order book for 13 ships. Now, 13 ships is an enormous order book for a shipyard. And so it's a simple solution. We don't let them close the doors. We decided to take over the yard.
I could see your reasoning. If you left and the thing as it went out that night, they could lock the gates and you couldn't get back in.
The working started off from there. We had workers controlling the yard, working in harmony. Now, to tell you the truth, this went on for a while, and at the end of it, when we won, and the yard was secure and the jobs were secure, all the top managers came and said, we don't want to go back to the old way. And it was a beautiful combination of idealism and realism. I associate Clydeside with people that are prepared to fight to preserve their community and the dignity of their community.
The work-in protest led to a U-turn from the Edward Heath government, and a £35 million injection of cash went into the yards at Govan, Scotstoun and Linthouse. Although Jimmy's union action won the battle, the war was ultimately lost, as the Thatcher government went on to implement most of the yard closures.
You'll have to understand that this shipyard was a source of great pride. It was world famous. It was almost symbolic of the town. And it's gone. There's nothing there.
So what is the future for shipbuilding on the Clyde?
Hello Nicholas, welcome to BAE Systems and our Scotstoun site.
Thank you, mate.
And I will just give you a hard hat and some glasses just now, and we'll go for a wander around the yard.
I've just arrived here at BAE Systems. They are the only working shipyard left here on Clydebank. And they have a contract to make Type 45 destroyers.
Morning, Nicholas.
Good morning, Keith.
Keith Dickey, ship manager of HMS Dragon.
And you serve your apprenticeship here, so you've really gone right up through the ranks.
Yes. Well, we'll let you see the ship because it's...
Yeah, I'd love to see a ship.
It's probably changed since the last one we've been on. She's currently sitting in number 2 dock, which is our dry dock facility.
I see it for the first time, Keith.
Yes.
I hadn't realised that a destroyer was so large.
Yeah, she's about 7,500 tonnes, 152 metres long.
I mean, it's about the size of an average cruise ship, isn't it?
Yeah, she has a beam of about 21 metres.
Well, it's all in gunmetal grey. I'm quite staggered, actually, at the size. When I worked here, I mean, there were thriving shipyards all the way down the Clyde, but now there's only about one left, which is yours.
Yeah, BAE Systems is the leading light as far as the Clyde's concerned for building ships. There are no really any other shipbuilders on the Clyde now. So it's our duty now to keep that tradition going.
I'm Joanne McGlinchey and I'm a third year mechanical engineer apprentice at BAE Systems.
When I was up here on Clydebank, everybody in the area was involved in some way in shipbuilding. Have you noticed any changes since you grew up?
Yes, my family most of them were involved in shipbuilding in some way. Now I tend to find that a lot of, especially people my age, have went on to different careers. There's not very many of us that have actually followed like our father's footsteps and went into the shipyard.
Well, of course, it is a much better learning for life than going into an office. I'm sure you must have felt that.
Definitely, the life experience it's taught me, I couldn't put a price on.
For the last leg of my journey Doon The Watta, I've come to the Titan crane. It's a huge, proud, blue cantilever crane that weighs an incredible 800 tons and is the oldest in the world. It's been restored and preserved as a visitor attraction and as a last icon of shipbuilding, towering high over the Clydebank landscape. I'm here with Brian Whittingham. And down on the left there's a sort of open site where there's diggers there pulling away rubble. Do you know, Brian, what they're going to build there?
They're talking about regenerating the whole area and making it hotels and cafeterias and shopping malls.
It's so depressing to come back after all these years and see I knew it was a thriving river with all those people working with full employment, and now to see the desolation. But coming down here now, you know, it gives you such hope for the future, because it's going to be beautiful when it's finished, isn't it?
I think it depends what eyes you look at this site with. In my mind's eye, I can still see all the different sheds and the fabrication, the boiler shop sheds were all down there. Then a bit further up there was engineering sheds. You get thousands of men running out there at stopping times. So if somebody's got an eraser and rubbed it all out and they're doing a new picture, and the new picture's a modern picture, it's bright and whatever, and hopefully it'll bring a lot of employment to the area, but it's a different type of employment, isn't it?
I've been very depressed to see practically all these proud shipyards razed to the ground. The noise in the background is the final clearance of the famous John Brown's yard. It's incredible to think that this is all gone. But the machines behind me are also the noise of moving forward. This area is being redeveloped. There's a future for this area, a very different future. But what I do know is that the spirit and character of the Glasgow people will always remain the same.